Lafayette Mayor-President Joel Robideaux. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Last we talked was just after the parish-wide millage renewal failed. And we talked a lot about kind of how do you move forward? What do you have to look at? And I know that's what your office has really been working on. Any update on that, where we kind of are with how we fund things like the jail and the courthouse?
Yeah, so we've looked at what we're allowed to do, and if we want to call it a renewal, then we can bring it back to the voters in the fall. If we miss that opportunity, then it becomes not a renewal anymore. And so we're looking hard at what's the best time to do that. But it looks like it needs to be November. There's a state law that was passed that says you have to wait 6 months on any revenue issue. So that, happened in April. So that means we'd have to wait till October, but we missed that one by a few days, I think. So it would obviously then have to be on the November ballot before we could bring it up again.
So, I mean, at this point, are you looking at ways to cut to stay within what you have, or really is the renewal really going to have to happen to effectively have the same services we do now?
Yeah, to have the same services, the renewal would have to happen. And now whether or not people want the same services or not, remains to be seen. But the parish budget is about a little over $16 million, as opposed to the city of Lafayette budget, which is about $300 million. So just to kind of put it in perspective. So, But out of the parish budget, I have to pay by law for, the clerk of court's office, the DAs, the judges, the register of voters, the coroners, the jail, the courthouse. Now, the voters made what I think is a correct decision a number of years ago to say, look, you only have $16 million to pay for everything, drainage, and all the stuff I just named, plus the stuff that's not required by law, which is drainage and transportation, parish issues like that. So the voters said, look, we're going to give you a separate millage for the jail, which is about a little over $4 million. We'll give you a separate millage for the courthouse, which is about $5 million. So that 10 or so million is in addition to the 16. So now you have the 16 to pay for all of those other things that I named earlier. If the millages aren't renewed, then that 9-point-something million or 10 million for the jail and the courthouse, I have to pay out of the 16 because I'm required by law to pay out of it, which means there's literally, all of those other services have to be cut. Even though they're required by law, they're required by law to support them at a reasonable level, whatever legal definition reasonable is.
Right.
So, the stuff like transportation drainage that isn't required by law is what becomes in jeopardy. The fact that the $5 million is what the courthouse is getting, we're going to get something obviously less. The DA is going to get less. The judges, the jail, everything's going to get less because it's only the $16 million I have to work with. And look, it was $20 million a few years ago, but with the kind of the oil crash, the sales taxes have just significantly declined more than property taxes went up. And so it's been on a gradual decline. And so no easy answers.
Gosh, we have an interesting system here where you have to wear two hats. You are the mayor of Lafayette and obviously the president of Lafayette Parish. I know when we have elections, whether something fails or maybe a specific candidate's not elected or however you look at it, the more the time goes by, the picture becomes clearer on what happened. And I think that it was very interesting to me that the city, passed, with a pretty decent margin, if I remember correctly, and the parish didn't. Do you see what the difference is in either I don't know if it's the voter sentiment in the city as opposed to the parish as a whole?
It's hard to say, and I don't like differentiating the people of the parish between the different cities in the parish. To me, we're a small enough geographical parish that we're all pretty similar. But the contrast between the vote was pretty stark, in this instance. And so from the beginning, I've taken the blame. I said, look, I didn't do a good job of getting the information out there on what the millages meant to the overall budget, this whole $16 million being the total pot of money. And that if the millages aren't renewed. So we're going to do a better job. We're going to make sure that the voters are fully informed. And look, it's hard for me to accept when there's an 11% turnout, basically 5.5% vote against it, 4.5% vote for it. It's like a 600 vote total. And then, of course, all the adults aren't even registered to vote. So when you look at it, something under 5% of the adult population decided we didn't need these millages when it's that low of a turnout.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit harder to accept than if we had a 50% turnout and the voters voted it down. I'd say that's clearly the will of the folks, and we're going to have to figure out what we have to do. But, getting voter turnout to some reasonable level has been an exercise in frustration. I don't know what you do differently to encourage people to go vote, but we can't control that. So all we can control is that we're going to get the message out. We're going to make sure people have the information they need to make their determination, and then we'll let the chips fall where they may.
See what happens.
Yeah.
The other issue that is kind of bubbled up, Bernie's reported extensively on Redflex for the 10 years that they were installed. We do know that that current contract or the previous contract expired. Where are we right now on the future of traffic cameras here in Lafayette?
Yeah, and can we clarify real quick? The cameras are off, and is that right? Because there was some article somewhere, but you're not going to pay a fine, or I mean, if it accidentally fires off, to your knowledge, you're not going to pay anything, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
My understanding though is the contract is terminated. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not the cameras are still running and still, because I guess there's always the possibility that we could negotiate a extension during whatever transition exists. And so it's conceivable that you could pull that data, and then issue the citations off of it. But my understanding is the cameras are dark. I don't know. I don't know if they've flashed on anybody or not right now.
Yeah.
So with what we were going to ask about with this idea of you had the request for proposals, 3 proposals were given. And what is the name? ATS? American Transport?
ATS.
Traffic Solutions, right?
Yeah. I couldn't really tell you. But
ATS. Let's just go with that.
Yeah.
So it's looking like we'd get a better deal with this company. So would we end up making more money? Would we get more money from, or where are we with this?
Yeah, well, we're in negotiations, so I can't really tell you because I don't know yet.
Lot. Right.
Huh? Not like
so you can't tell us a lot of probably what you would like to be able to say.
We're going to try to negotiate the best deal that we can.
Uh-huh.
But I've heard, loud and clear from some of the councilmen. I mean, they're not even interested in this program if there's not going to be an enforcement of the citation. Mm-hmm. And the Redflex went through multiple councils and amendments and changes and this whole, period of time when it was deemed to be unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And then that courts have, proven out across the country that's not the case. I mean, they've upheld the right of municipalities to issue these citations. And so to me, all of that's kind of water under the bridge. And so now we've got a total reset that will negotiate what hopefully would be a better contract for Lafayette, and then have those conversations with the councilman and say, if we're willing to enforce, because what's unfair is just the folks that do the right thing and pay the tickets, and then other people can just effectively ignore it and nothing was ever going to happen to them other than getting a few threatening letters, but never the final follow-up.
Right.
I'm not sure the council would allow us to enter into a contract if there's not going to be some enforcement piece to it.
As Joel Robideaux, the father and the husband and the guy who is just working, how do you feel about red light cameras as a driver?
I think they're good. I mean, if you don't want them, don't run the red light or don't speed. And again, the speed is set at some pretty significant level over the speed limit. So if you're going a few miles an hour over the speed limit, it won't even register. You have to,
you have to be really
significant. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty significant. So to me, it's one of those things that if you never run red lights and you never speed, then you don't ever have to worry about it.
So what about the critics who say that's a money grab? That's a money grab, because is it? I mean, it does fun things. You're using it for traffic.
Well, it goes straight to the police department for their traffic division. So I mean, it's not in the general fund of the city. It's
going straight into the traffic department of the police.
Of the police.
Yeah.
That's right. It is in the police budget. And so I would say 2 things. And again, I wasn't involved at the beginning.
Sure.
So whatever, however it was sold to the public is not really an issue of mine. I know this. there is a safety component, without a doubt, and I think it should be expanded into school zones. And, because I think it would slow a lot of folks down when school's in session that don't. And I can't. I don't have the budget to put motorcycle cops at every school every morning and every afternoon. It's just not reality. So to me, there is the safety component, and there is the budget component. There is revenue that's generated, no different than if the police were writing the tickets. There'd be revenue generated, and folks don't like that either. I mean, we know that. No one likes to be, stopped by a cop, pulled over. If they were speeding, it's probably because they were in a hurry anyway, and that's going to slow them down even more. But so to me, it's both. I mean, and so why? Let's have an open and honest discussion about it. It's about the police budget. It's about safety. And I think it's good because if you don't break the law, you don't have to pay it.
I feel like some of the criticism was always about it being a third-party company and not Lafayette Police or not the city of Lafayette. Is there any option on the table, or is it even feasible to say, hey, we know as LCG or a city of Lafayette what the technology is. Why don't we just invest in the cameras and then we get all the money? Is that a possibility?
Well, it's a possibility, but you have to decide that you're going to spend millions of dollars. And then right now with roads and drainage, it's like, okay, is that the best, or can I hang on to all of our money and then just share in the revenue with this third party? And
let them pay all that stuff.
They take the risk, really.
Yeah, they take the risk of collections and the risk of, and we assign, it's our policemen that are reviewing every video,
Well, and I think that's a discussion probably that needs to continue too, because I think people have an idea that it's some person that works for a company somewhere.
No, it's us. I mean, we review them all. And technology drives so much. I mean, I'm sure when there was radar guns that came out, people were livid because what do you mean? I don't believe the gun. How do you know that reading's accurate? And so forth. And now it's cameras, and it's going to continue to change. But I'll tell you what, the technology that's out there that is available for municipalities as it relates to crashes and crime, they capture a whole lot more in the way of HD, in the way of range, and so it's a significant tool to have for the police department.
That's very good information. Very
much so. So as we kind of are wrapping up on this issue, where would the enforcement come from? Like if I don't pay that ticket,
it's a civil fine. So that would mean it would go to court. So you would get the threatening letter.
Yeah.
But if you don't respond to the threatening letter, then the suit will be filed. If that, that would be the enforcement piece. So the council and I are going to have some long discussions about, look, I don't care if we're dark for a month. I don't care if we're dark for 6 months. We're going to get this right. We're going to put a program in place that's going to reflect the safety that we feel like needs to be in there. That's going to reflect a budget that the police department, and what are they going to use it for? And one that is enforceable. Because what I don't want is for the Good Samaritans to pay, everybody else to get away with it. And we build up this huge balance over the course of a decade of uncollected fines that becomes really almost impossible to go file suit against people about something that happened 8 years ago. That's not good policy, So the council and I are going to have some real discussions about, all right, are we willing to put this enforcement in place? Are we going to boot cars that get parking tickets that have delinquent Redflex? Are we going to take people to court to collect the fines if they're, refusing to pay? And if those things are something the council's willing to do, then I think we're going to have a safe light, safe speed program. If they're not, we may not have the program. Because I'm not willing to go down the path of, some people pay, some don't. It's just whether you feel like it or not.
Yeah.
That's not a good public policy.
Well, we appreciate your time this morning. Great information, as always. Lafayette Mayor-President Joel Robideaux. Again, welcome anytime here. Great information, of course. I know a lot of people are out there, this is like the first week. Some people were calling us on Monday saying, they're not going off or, and it's like, hey, it's no excuse because they're not there. But, what you brought up about school zones, Texas governor just signed a no texting and driving anywhere. It used to be you can't in school zones. And then it was you can't talk within this far of a school. But now it's anywhere. And I mean, I really think the traffic thing and the distraction is really what you're kind of going after, even in addition to the just speeding for no reason, you know?
We spoke to someone who drives Camellia every day back and forth to get where they're going, and they said it's been like the Wild West since the cameras have been shut off. So if you just want to pass that along to anybody.
You just did.
Maybe the motorcycle cops are like, oh, what are we going to do today? Oh, we can go to Camellia. I don't know.
Get a burger at Grub Burger and watch out for what's happening.
Yeah, she was saying like, man, it's crazy out there. So,
all right, it's 7:57. Appreciate your time as always.